talking about Madison and the press release that went out today. Then we'll work into the Tuscarora drill results that were just released. We'll talk about those. And then we'll get into just the company as a whole as we go forward into 2023, because there's obviously an awful lot to say and a busy year coming ahead. But perhaps let's start with Madison, with the skarn specialist, with the report that came out this morning. Eric and I were thrilled to learn of the findings of the skarn specialist, which was conducted by the team over at Rio, and hiring this specialist to go down, be on site, was on site for some time, as well as reviewing all of the data, doing some of sampling of his own, and coming out with what we were incredibly pleased with his conclusion. So let's talk about it. Initially, he reviewed the skarn as we know it today, which he came back and essentially said, look, it's 130 meters thick. So that puts it comparable to the other skarns globally, which is a great start. You know, as of year 2 with Rio, they had come back to us and said that they felt the skarn itself was a Rio Tinto sized target, which Eric and I were thrilled about 2 years ago. So now having him come in, give an idea in terms of thickness as it relates to other skarns around the world, is certainly a nice validation and a target that they can continue to go after. What was most interesting, and I'll pass off to Eric to speak about it geologically in a moment, is him talking about these carbonates and how that can host additional skarns, and there being numerous new targets at Madison for Rio to go after. And his recommendation is that they go after and drill these, most of which have never seen any drilling on them, including a package that is 2,100 meters by 650 meters. So a much larger target than the target we have today. That certainly gives a lot of excitement for Eric and I. I'm going to pass off to Eric now so he can talk about it briefly, but I'm also just going to show a video clip, which some of you may have seen before, but this gives an opportunity to kind of see the target as we know it today. But also in around the 2-minute mark, you'll be able to see the new target and part of what they're going to be going after. So with that, let me pass off to Eric. I will say this, just Eric, give me 2 seconds and I'll pass off. What people are seeing now is right where the skarn as we know it is today. You're going to see the portal coming up here, and then it's going to rise above, and it's going to show some of the ground where they park their rigs, etc., which you're going to see now, and then it's going to move off to the carbonates, which I'll let Eric point out. So with that, Eric, please take over.
Okay, well, what you're seeing here obviously is alteration associated with the skarn. It's the surface alteration, it's the oxide portion. What the skarn expert really keyed in on was the abundant other smaller workings that really haven't been tested much more than with the pick and shovel. So as we move through this and we move up towards the north here, you'll start to see abundant workings, both lower and higher. These are all in the carbonate package, which Warwick referenced. So limestones and dolomites, things that traditionally host skarn mineralization. This was where the Broadway mine was originally, where they were mining mostly just straight gold. And it sits right directly on top of one of these skarn bodies. So as you get to the top here and you look off to the south, which is the direction we're aimed at right now on this video, you see an expanse of rocks. And this expanse is that carbonate package. Some of it is it's hidden under a little bit of gravel. So those thin gravels have obscured a few things. But Rio's done quite a bit of soil work, and so they've identified other targets on their own. But the skarn expert really says that whole package is worthy of exploration, and it really hasn't been explored yet.
Eric and I heard about this skarn report about I'd say roughly 10 days ago when we first heard from Rio. It takes roughly that amount of time to get a press release ready and then approved by Rio and get it out. But I think suffice it to say, you know, Eric, please comment on this. But when we got the opportunity to review it, the report is very technical to begin with. But once we had the opportunity to kind of go through it and get a feeling, I know we were both incredibly pleased. The opportunity there for there to be, you know, potentially a larger skarn is something that excites us and obviously excites Rio. So, you know, Eric, again, I'll pass that off to you to comment on.
Well, the fact that it is 130 meters thick does make it essentially world class in its thickness, sort of potential thickness. That package of rocks is up to 250 meters thick. So the favorable rock unit package is about 130. And it can be obscured. It can be skarns don't always have to be present at the surface like an epithermal vein or some other types of deposits. So this one has got plenty of potential targets moving, especially to the north and especially to the south. Also, there's a package of rocks out to the west, which has been thrust over this carbonate sequence, and that hasn't been tested whatsoever. It has high-grade veins cutting through it. It's not favorable to skarn, but it'll cap the rock, it'll cap the skarn potential there and allow for fluids to move along that contact. And that's essentially how skarns are formed in the first place. So one of the most prime hosts has not been tested even a little bit yet.
Final thing, Eric, I'll get you to comment on. We didn't talk about this in advance, but how does this relate to the porphyry? And I know that was mentioned in the report, so maybe you want to talk a bit about that. And we know they've drilled through the porphyry previously, but obviously that can be the grand prize per se. So perhaps maybe you can just reference that.
Yeah, in 2017, they drilled into, prior to Rio, a hole was drilled into a late-type porphyry, which is pretty much an essential component of just about any porphyritic system. What hasn't been tested is, and where I think the porphyry is located, is off to the west, underneath this thrusted package of unfavorable rocks, and that has not been tested. But it does show up well in a gravity and in a magnetic survey. And so I think that the skarn expert probably said you've got to vector towards that. So that the possibility of a porphyry is out there as well, but certainly the possibility, the near-term possibility to make these skarn bodies bigger is very real.
Excellent. That's a bit on Madison. Obviously, very pleased with what we've seen there. Let's touch on Tuscarora. We've been waiting on these results and getting these out. We're pleased with what we've seen. It was a smaller program than we had initially planned, but we've got some good holes and get some good data out of this program. It was a challenging program as well, and we'll talk about that and why and what the challenges were, mostly in terms of recoveries. What we ended up finding as we went through this system, and we've always known it's a bit of a nuggety system, is that when our regular assays weren't giving us what we thought we were getting, that we were seeing at surface. So we'll talk about that in a moment. The second thing that it's given us is it's given us some high grades. So it's given us 1.5 meters at 12 grams, 1.5 meters, almost 7 grams, 1.5 meters of 6 grams, 1.5 meters of 5 grams gold, all within the range of what we were drilling previously and what predecessors had drilled previously, which is great to see. What we had seen in 2018 was there was a longer hole that was drilled that was roughly 80 meters, slightly more than 80 meters of just under a gram. And Eric and I kind of looked at each other and said, that's open pit potential. And that's something that we have never really spoken about. But, the truth be told, the very first hole that Eric drilled, we spoke and he said, this will end up being an open pit rather than just an underground mine. We've seen that more this time as well, where there are these longer runs of lower grade. And quite honestly, the last time that there was production done at Tuscarora, it was an open pit, which was done by Chevron and Horizon back in the late 80s. So it's an interesting new target as well. And in nuggety systems, when you're working it from an open pit, you're capturing all of that as well. So Eric, I'll let you speak to that, and then I'll show I'll show the video clip and a couple of slides as we kind of talk through the nugget effect and how that came into play here.
Traditionally, right now in Newmont and in the past, your average grade, when you put it all together with your high grade and your low grade for an oxide deposit open pit, is less than 1 gram per ton. So that just shows you how low a grade can get. It's your recoveries that really pay the bills on that kind of thing. So this has got abundant oxide. It's a very deeply oxidized system. In fact, all of these low grade intercepts we've hit, over one in 2018 and several this year, are all in oxide material. So it's pretty easy to see. You could put together a bulk tonnage mine, and it has some nice nuggets in it. The Dexter pit, where Warwick just referenced, had 2 veins coming through it and had up to 10 gram per ton material mixed up with the lower grades. It still made money even back in the 80s when gold was at $250 an ounce. So it's a very economic way to mine. It's something that we really haven't given that much thought to, but now we have to because we're getting more and more of it.
Eric, do you want to talk about how the results sort of broke out between Navajo, Modoc, et cetera, and where we're seeing this new style of mineralization?
Sure. We saw the first one at South Navajo. Now we've moved, probably 2,000 meters off to the west into the Modoc. And that's one of our furthest west veins. That's one that we acquired a couple of years ago. We increased the property by twice the size. And so it's now moved, the potential has moved very much further. We're not drilling right next to where we drilled the original lower grade, but big intercept hole. So it's a new exciting thing. We really weren't expecting to hit it, and one of our holes stopped in it. We just really weren't aware that we were, testing that type of deposit. But it's very promising.
So with that, let's touch on for a second some of the nugget effect that we ran into. So one of the things that we ended up doing is we were seeing visual gold, and I'll show you a bit of what that looks like, and I'll show you also a PowerPoint of how we went through our assay process. So we were seeing visual gold and then getting results back that weren't particularly high grade. So we were confused. So we ran a secondary, which is called a gravity screen, and we put those through for assay as well. What we were finding is the gravity screens were incredibly higher. We haven't released those, and we're not going to release those because it's not going to be necessarily a representative sample, and we want to stay compliant. What we are doing is we're taking the core that we have, the chips that we have, and we're running those through what's called a photon assay. And that's going to give us probably the best representative sample, we believe, of this sort of nuggety effect. But let me give you an idea and sort of show you what I'm talking about as we go through this. This is some of the visual gold that we came across. There's a hand sample there. Another one of the hand samples here where you can see the gold circled in the middle. This one's under a digital scope, but again, you can see the gold coming through and the chips there. It's a hand sample with, I believe, Eric's thumb over it. Another hand sample here. Nice shot there of the visual gold that you can see. Here's one under a digital scope. Great hand sample there. We use this one in the press release. So that's a head of a Bic pen, as you can see it. So there's a one gram gold nugget there that you can see. Lots of smaller flakes here, but kind of again, just to give you an idea when you're looking under a digital scope that we can see this coarse gold within the project. Another one on a digital scope here, and then another hand sample here. So how did we come up with this? So what does this mean, and how does this factor in? Let me show you the process, and I'll do this rather quickly. But here we are. This is looking down at South Navajo, if I'm not mistaken. You can see the drill rig there. You can see our excavator there, and then you can see we brought a second. Oh, sorry, Eric. Go ahead.
It's not showing.
Oh, one moment. My apologies. There we go. Is that better?
Yes.
There we go. Here's the setup down at South Navajo. So here's where we were drilling. We've got our sample bags there, etc. And then you can kind of see as we kind of walk through this process, samples are being caught concurrently via the cyclone pie splitter. Brought over there. There's a deck sample for the bags for the RC and a bucket of everything does not go into the bag for the gravity separation. Your standard RC bags are off to the left, and the duplicate samples are caught in buckets for the gravity separation technique. You can see Zach off to the right-hand side there. Zach starts shoveling in the material into the bucket. Another shot of that. Zach looking up at you. This is all filmed by one of the drones that we have on site. He then uses water to force gravity separation to bring out the coarse nature. Another shot of that, putting it through the grates and the mats. Continues rinsing it until all the coarse material has gone through the unit. Pours and rinses the bucket into the unit. Next removes the grates, dumps off any remaining material onto the mats. Now he's putting the fines and heavies back into the bucket. Takes the bucket over into the hosed out area there. He conducts a visual inspection, looking at mats for visible nuggets, which we just showed you photos of. Shakes out the newly washed mats as another step to avoid any sort of cross-contamination. Rinses off all the metal grates, and then takes any of the free debris from the previous sample. Now he's going to put all his mats back, puts all the grates down, sets the fines up from the circuit, finally brings over the sample bucket from the cyclone. It's typically about 15 kilos. Rinse and repeat, and then he does the same thing again. So that was the process, just to kind of give you an idea as to how we were coming up with this. So now those results that you've seen, we'll go off and go through the photon assay as I discussed. Eric, maybe take 2 seconds and talk a bit about this photon assay and how that works.
Well, it's a relatively new procedure, and they've used it in very nuggety rock down in Australia, and it's in mines that are actually in operation, so they can get blast hole data and compare it to what they're getting out of their fire assays. And they're showing an upgrade generally, so they wind up blending them for their ore control. But it's almost a universal upgrade because of the procedure is quite unique. You run it through a photon, it's just essentially a machine, and it beams it, and you have to grind it, but not as fine as you do for a fire assay. And you don't just use one sample like you do for a fire assay, you use 10 per sample. So you get a much better chance of getting a representative sample out of it, and you'll have a better chance of picking up those high-grade nuggets that might just get away from any kind of fire assay.
Very good. I'm going to play a quick video now as well, just to show you some of the targets that we haven't had a chance to drill yet, that we're going to discuss December 1st at our board meeting, with a plan to go and do phase 2. So let me share a screen here and walk you through those so you can see those in a visual space as well.
Welcome to the American Pacific Tuscarora update. Tuscarora is a large property located in northern Nevada containing numerous precious metal vein occurrences. The extensive soil work is shown in the background grid, and the surface vein traces are in red. The Phase 1 drilling program focused on the western and southern veins, Modoc, South Navajo, and Repo areas. Drill sites are shown in black. The 2002 CSAMT geophysical results highlighted several new vein targets that have never been tested. CSAMT allows us to identify subsurface vein structures even if they are covered by alluvial gravels. A strong resistivity anomaly interpreted as silica mineralization is located on the acquired northern property and is found along the projection of the East Pediment vein. This vein has yielded a historic gold intercept of over 52 grams per ton, over 1.5 meters. This is the projection of the intersection of the silver-rich gold prize and gold-bearing East Pediment veins. This pronounced anomaly appears here in blue. This untested target has eluded detection in the past due to being covered by a thin veneer of gravels, represented by the upper pink coloration. This has rapidly evolved into a major target for us. The northern portion of the property acquired in 2021 contains well-developed untested anomalies along the projection of the Modoc, King, and Pinto vein structures. American Pacific will drill test these newly defined targets as part of our Phase 2 program. The permitting of these highly prospective sites is in process. Thank you.
So as Eric mentions in that video, we are gearing up to do a Phase 2 at Tuscarora to go after some of the targets that we didn't get a chance to drill here. Now that this polymer acquisition is complete, and we've got some opportunity to focus and get out and drill those as well. So December 1st of this year, we have a board meeting to go through budgets, and this will certainly be one of the budget items that we're looking for in 2023. That's a bit on Madison. That's a bit on Tuscarora. Indulge me for 2 minutes, and I will give you my thoughts for 2023 and the road ahead for American Pacific. So American Pacific today is sitting around a $75–80 million market cap. We've got partnerships with Dowa Mining and Metals on the Palmer project that we've just acquired. We've got a partnership with Rio Tinto down in Montana, and then along with Tuscarora and Gooseberry, 100% owned assets that we have, and we have good focus on as well. In 2023, our partners will spend roughly $30 million US between the two projects. And we are in a position where we don't have to contribute to those at this time. That's an awful lot of development and exploration that's coming for $30 million US on an $80 million Canadian market cap company. There's probably not a lot of juniors out there that can say that they're going to have that amount of work being done and to a fact that they're not in a position where they have to contribute. We're sitting on around $8.5 million in cash. We've got another $3 million of warrants that are all well in the money as well. So we're certainly very well cashed up. That allows us to go up and get after Tuscarora again, as well as get up and go after Gooseberry. So 2023 is shaping up to be the largest year by far that American Pacific has ever seen in terms of development and exploration. So with that, that's a quick update from us. I'm happy to take a moment and answer a few questions. So if you have any questions, feel free to put them into the Q&A here. Start off with what has been Kennecott's reaction and impression of the report. Certainly, Eric and I had a long discussion with the team over at Kennecott Rio, who we've developed a great relationship with and have been fantastic partners. I know I've said that before, but I think it's worth repeating just because we've been so pleased with them. I think reinvigorate is probably the wrong word because they've always been very high and very engaged on Madison, but it's certainly given them, new excitement for Madison. This is an entirely new target. It's a larger target than we had seen before. There's still lots of work to be done at the skarn that we know, but here's a whole new opportunity to get in and go after. So certainly, without putting words in their mouth, it's been a good turn in their eyes as well. When do you expect to notify when do you expect Kennecott to notify you of their drill plans and next steps? So every year around Christmas time, just before Christmas, we sit down with the Kennecott Rio guys. They give a presentation to us as to what they've done for the year, what they've seen, and what their plans are for next year. So, within the next few weeks, call it 3 weeks to a month, we'll talk to Rio, go through it with them, find out what their plans are and how much they're looking to spend in coming into 2023. We're excited. Obviously, anxiously want to know how much they want to spend and where they're going to drill. The assumption is they're going after the new target. So we're certainly looking forward to seeing that. So as soon as we get that, then we'll let you know. Expected catalysts between now and year end. So we'll announce the work that was done by DOA and the predecessor Constantine from here till year's end. We're looking to have some news out on Gooseberry as well as a couple of other press releases that are in the works on. So there'll be significant catalysts from here till year's end. And then once we get into 2023, as I say, that's going to be certainly by far the largest year in terms of exploration and development in American Pacific's history. Just having a look here. So many projects. What are your thoughts on scaling the business but spending smart money? Primarily thinking about how can we move Tuscarora and Gooseberry forward at a quicker pace? Also, any thoughts on bringing on more drills? Yeah, all things to be discussed at our board meeting on December 1st. Look, I think we can do an awful lot of damage up at Gooseberry with even a smaller campaign, knowing that there's three veins there that were discovered by a CSAMT and one discovered by drilling. There's an awful lot to go after, and that's certainly something that we'd like to do. Numerous targets up at Tuscarora as well. We're cashed up to do all of that, and we'd like to get after those. That's decisions to be made as we sit down with the board here on December the 1st. Here's a question: how do you balance the needed exploration budget with conserving cash burn? I think we've done a good job in this past year of evaluating where and when we're going to spend our capital. Obviously, it's a challenging market as it has been for the juniors, but we're able to create a lot of news. And especially next year coming up, there's going to be, as I had mentioned, call it $30 million US between the two partners that's going to be spent without us having to contribute to that. That's an awful lot of news for a junior company, and so I'm looking forward to getting that out, but we're still sitting on an awful lot of cash as a company. Here's one for Eric. Are you concerned over the narrow widths at the Tuscarora drill results? I mean, they've been pretty similar to all the drill results that have been drilled there. But Eric, I'm happy to being mineable widths, etc.
Well, when you're drilling this type of program, and we did focus on what you would call almost straight exploration. Once you get away from the Navajo vein, you're dealing with veins that really have only been tested by the surface miners. There are no drill holes into them. So you're not flying blind, you're drilling at the vein. So yeah, a vein that's just a few feet wide would be source of consternation. But if you use the South Navajo vein as a model, there are several zones that went several meters. And if you can put together 15, 20 gram hits, you can take a little dilution. So a 5-foot vein, 6-foot vein far exceeds anything that, say, Fire Creek ever had. So I'm not too concerned with it at this moment. If we went into a program and we drilled 100 holes and we still wound up with a whole lot of thinner veins, yes, that would be a source of concern, but not now.
We've seen this with Navajo. I remember previously there was a 9.5 meter section that ran 5 grams. And then you get these tighter sections where they run high grade. So it kind of pinches and swells, which I think is fairly normal for these veins. I think that's about it, everyone. So I certainly appreciate the time and reach out to either myself, Eric, or Christina with any more questions. As I say, there'll be a significant year coming up. There's going to be lots of news from here now until the end of the year. But coming into 2023, we'll have a significant amount of news flow for both exploration and development, partner funded. So we look forward to an exciting 2023 ahead, and we thank you for taking your time to listen to us. Thanks very much.